All right, so continuing with law of sines, law of cosines, let's take a look at what type of triangle we have here. All right, before we move on here, I want to find the length of xz. So I'm looking for the length of xz. Okay, before we do that though, let's just check and see what we have here. So remember, in order to use the law of cosines, we need to have side angle side or side side side. All right, so I do have a side, I do have another side, and this is my angle. My angle is located between my two sides, therefore I can use the law of cosines. So the law of cosines is c squared equals a squared plus b squared minus 2ab cosine of big C. All right, so let's talk about those things real quick. The two most important features of this triangle are where little c is and where big C is. Okay? Big C is your angle. Always the angle. Little c is always the side opposite of that angle. Okay? So let's take a look. I'm looking for xz. So I'm just going to call that a little x there because that's what we're looking for. My angle is big C, okay? Which makes this little c because it's the one side that's across from that angle. Now, just like in the Pythagorean theorem, A and B, they don't matter, okay? They're either side, you pick. So I just normally just start from left to right. So we'll call this A and we call this B. Now all we do is plug in. So let's see. We don't know little c, so let's just leave that c squared. Okay. I do know what a is. That is 35 squared plus b, which is 30 squared, minus 2 times 35, because that's a, times 30, because that's b, cosine of big C. All right, so what we have here is we have a bunch of junk, right? And I understand that that may look really confusing to you, but in reality, all we did was just take the stuff and just plug it in, okay? What to do now to solve it is what you have to think about. So my variable is located over here by itself. The only thing that's with it is a square. If you recall, the way to get rid of a square is to square root, and that will give me little c. Thus, that will give me what this length is, right? But if I square root that, I have to square root all of this. And I can do that. I can use a calculator and take the square root of all that stuff, okay? If you're a person who likes to calculate things in chunks, you can do that. You can figure out what 35 squared is. You can figure out what 30 squared is. You can figure out what negative 2 times 35 times 30 is, times the cosine of 110. And you can put them all together, then square root. But at the end, you're still going to get the same answer, which is going to be approximately 53, erase that, 53.32. So that's going to be the length of 53.32 is going to be the length of this side. So after you plug this in the calculator, it's going to spit out an answer of 53.32. All right, so let's take a look at another problem. All right, so looking at this next problem, we still have three sides, which is great because side, side, side is one of the ways to use the law of cosines. So I'm going to write that down again. C squared equals a squared plus b squared minus 2ab cosine of big C. Remember, big C is the angle, okay? And little c is the side that's across from that angle. All right, so in this case, what we want to look for is angle T. If I'm looking for angle T, then angle T is x, right? And since I'm looking for that angle, that's going to be big C. There's no big A, no big B, it's big C. Since the angle I'm looking for is big C in this case, little c is going to be 7 because it's the angle or the side that's across from that angle, right? All right, so we're always going to know A and B. We just have to figure out what we're looking for in terms of C. Are we looking for big C or are we looking for little c? This time we know little c. Again, A and B doesn't matter how you label them. I'm just going to label this A and this B. You'll still get the same answer, and then I'm going to start plugging in. So this time I do know little c, so let's go ahead and put that in there. 7 squared equals 13 squared plus 11 squared minus 2 times 13 times 11 times the cosine of x, or big C, because we don't know what it is. All right, so looking from the previous problem, this time my variable is located on the right side with all the junk. So I can't just square root and end the problem. Now, see, I got to condense things down now. All right, so that's what I would start doing. I just start kind of condensing and squaring and simplifying. So 7 squared is 49. 13 squared is 169. 11 squared is 121. If I take this stuff and multiply it together, I get negative 286. And then I have the cosine of big C. Okay. Remember, always if you need to, just pause the video, try it. Okay. See if you get the same answers I do. All right. So as I look at this, I still need to condense some things down. I need to isolate my variables, so I need to get this thing right here by itself. To do that, I got to move all this other stuff that's on this side over to the other side. All right, so the main mistake that most kids make is they add all three of these numbers, 169, 121, and negative 286. However, the only two things that I can combine are these, because this number is attached to this cosine of C. And these don't have cosines of C's, therefore we can't combine them because they're not like terms. Maybe kind of weird to understand that, but we don't really need to combine those because cosine of C is attached to the negative 286. So we can only combine 169 and 121. So I'm going to rewrite it as that combined, okay? So 49 equals 169 plus 121, which is 290, minus 286, cosine of big C. As I said previously, I can't do anything with this negative 286 yet. So what I have to do is I have to subtract it. Subtract this 290 off of the 49. So I can start moving this stuff away from there. When I do that, I get negative 241 being equal to negative 286 cosine of big C. All right, now, we can divide and multiply things, but we can never add things that are not alike. So to get rid of this negative 286, I can divide it off now. Now, if you recall from the law of sines, I can't get rid of a cosine with that because that's part of my variable. So in reality, I have this, right? So I'm just going to leave that as negative 241 over negative 286. So I'm going to write it over here. The cosine of big C is equal to 241 over 286. Both negative, right? Okay. Now, since we're looking for an angle, you have to know that to get rid of this C, we have to do the inverse. So the inverse cosine, okay, the inverse cosine of negative 241 over negative 286 is going to be equal to my angle measurement that I'm looking for. Because I've isolated my cosine of C, and now I'm able to just do that in my calculator. And when I do that, I should get approximately 32.58 degrees. All right, so we have two ways of solving this problem. We either have to find the side length or we have to find the angle measurement. Using the law of cosines isn't as bad as it looks. You just have to condense it down, okay? You have to understand what you're starting with. If I already know my angle and I'm looking for my side, then it becomes a very easy problem that you can just throw in your calculator. But if I don't know my angle, I have to do this little bit of math to get my cosine by itself. Once I do that, then I can go ahead and do the inverse cosine, which will allow me to get the angle that I need. All right, guys, that's all for today.